So I'm Tony Cirillo. I am an emergency physician. I am a PGY 30. Um, yeah, that's a real thing. And I live in Rhode Island. So that's where I am right now. I'm at home in Rhode Island. And I have been a member of ACEP starting in 1990. So I've been a member of ACEP for 35 years. And I actually started out as not a medical student, but almost as a medical student. And we all have our story of how we're going to end up in emergency medicine. I actually was going into OBGYN to do infertility. And a buddy of mine, I went to medical school in Vermont, and a classmate said, who he knew he was going into emergency medicine. He said, "Hey, I'm going out to Colorado to do a month of emergency medicine in November. Why don't you come out? We'll ski, we'll have a blast." And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" Um, and so we go out to Colorado, and it turns out we were going to Denver. And not only were we going to Denver, we were going to Denver General, right? Like the original knife and gun club ED of emergency medicine. And I had already been interviewing for OB residencies, and I literally on day one of my ED rotation went, "Oh, damn, this is where all the cool kids are." And I literally on that first day of the rotation said, "Okay, I'm going to do emergency medicine." And part of that is at that time, um, there is a textbook of emergency medicine, Rosen's textbook of emergency medicine. And not only was Peter Rosen out there, but all of the other authors of that textbook were the attendings out there. Like those were the gods of emergency medicine. And so I've been now in the game for 30 plus years. I ended up doing a transitional year at GW in DC, and then did my residency at UMass in Worcester, Massachusetts. Took an academic job at Albany Med for a few years, and then I've been out in the community ever since. So I've had a great run. It's been a great career. You will have a great career. And I got involved in EMRA. I was on the EMRA board of directors in my second and third year residency. And now I've been on the ACEP board for 7 years, and I'm president-elect of the college. So my running joke is I got elected last year in 2024. So my running joke is 2024 just proves that anybody can get elected president in this country. Just saying. Not to bring politics in, but we'll get there. So that's who I am. My only disclosure is I told you I work for U.S. Acute Care Solutions. I've been with them for 21 years. I'm going to tell you, you're going to hear lots of chatter in the world. You're going to hear lots of stuff on Reddit and social media. I want you just to keep in mind, how many of you watched the Ted Lasso Be Curious, Not Judgmental episode?
Oh my
Have you all
goodness.
seen that
Such a
one?
good
Right? We've
show.
all seen that clip.
Such a
No?
good show.
Come on, okay, that's your homework. That's your to-do. You only have to watch one Ted Lasso episode, and it's the darts episode. And it's about being curious and not judgmental, and how your world will be very different if you approach it in that way. So I want you to just understand there's a lot of opinions about different group practices in emergency medicine. Do your own homework and ask a million people, and do not believe everything you see on social media. That's what I'm going to just give you a hint on that. All right, so what do I want you all to take out of this? In a nutshell, look, this is your career you are embarking on. The world of politics and healthcare and advocacy are yours for the taking. Somebody is going to be trying to change things. They may or may not be changing what things the way you believe they should be changed, or the things that you know need to be changed as you begin your journey in, as a physician. So things are going to happen, and you're either going to be part of that and have a voice, or you're going to have change happen to you. So what I want to do is walk you through the rationale for why I believe that, walk you through how you can find your place in that realm, and then how you can be effective. And then the last thing I'm going to leave you with at the early part, at this beginning of your journey, is something that I learned as a third year medical student. And I hope that it's something that will help you as you go through, hopefully, your PGY 30 years in emergency medicine. So advocacy is about change. It's about something's not the way you want, and you want to make it different. there's a lot of words on that wordgram there. But keep in mind, for everything that is, even the things that you think are right, somebody has a different opinion, and they may be wanting to change that from something that's going well to something not that you believe should happen, or vice versa. So this is a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong fight. And particularly, I'm going to share with you, I consider myself an advocate. I'm not a registered lobbyist. Lobbyist is a bad word, right? It's like lawyer. Like nobody wants to grow up to be a lobbyist. But if you look at those people on the other side of the screen, those people were all advocates. And if you said, boy, I'd like to be an advocate like Mahatma Gandhi, it kind of raises the game to a much higher level. And I want you to think about that you are going to be in fights and you're going to have to advocate. It's going to be hard at times. But sometimes the hardest fights are the ones that are worth fighting. And God help us all. We are living, I think this fortune cookie we'll just open up. That should be the only fortune cookie from now on, because I don't think we're ever not going to be in interesting times. And I want you to understand that your journey is going to be hard. You've picked, if you're going to pick emergency medicine, it's hard. The world that we live in is challenging. It's becoming more challenging. So what I don't want you to do is to, honestly, I'm going to be brutally honest with you here. If you go in with this, Pollyanna approach of, oh, everything's going to be perfect, you're going to be unhappy. Because I have a formula, and unhappy equals expectations minus reality. And if you have set your expectations that you are going to work at Utopia General Hospital in Denver, Colorado, make $500,000 a year working 8 shifts and ski the rest of the month, you're going to be unhappy. So part of our world, my world, your world, our world together, is acknowledging that things may not be exactly the way we want, but we've got to understand where they are. That's the expectation, setting the right expectation. And then we can change reality together. That's what advocacy is all about. Advocacy is about changing and bringing those two things closer together. And you can keep raising the bar on expectation, but we have to do that as we raise the bar on reality, right? So we have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But if you start out here and reality is down here, and you think we're going to get here tomorrow, it's going to be a real challenge. I will bring in Morpheus from the Matrix. I'm going to have 2 Matrix. I hope you all know the Matrix, because I have 2 Matrix references. So welcome to the real world. And the other thing is, you all know the speed of everything is accelerating at an exponential rate. The speed of medical knowledge, I'm amazed that every day somebody's figured out what to do with the ultrasound probe and put it on or in another part of the body that nobody thought you could ever ultrasound before. And all of a sudden we've got a brand new something else to do. So just be aware of that. And we are in a realm. I was just at the CORD conference, so the Council of Residency Directors in Seattle. And the keynote speaker was the medical director for Google. And he was talking about generative AI and the things that they are imagining. And all I can give you was, my immediate thought was, oh, this is Cyberdyne. This is the Terminator. They are going to create the robots to kill all the people. Awesome. Great. And the most terrifying part of that presentation was, at one point he ran this clip, and it was the voices of a man and a woman doing a podcast talking about a medical topic, except there was no man and the woman ever. It was all the AI creating the podcast. And I literally said, we don't need the humans anymore. And so for those of you who are educators, you can cancel Wednesday grand rounds or Wednesday conference morning, because everything is going to be personalized, iterative, generative AI teaching. I'm telling you, it's coming. The Google people are not waiting for us. So be prepared for whatever you think you know, you won't know tomorrow. And this statement, while well-intentioned, is the most naive statement I've ever seen. So politics and healthcare are always going to be inextricably linked. They always have been, and they always will be. So we can talk about we don't like the politics that in the healthcare, but there's always going to be politics in healthcare. So again, if in terms of expectation, you got to know this is going to be a fight every day, and it's going to be a political fight every day, and the fight may change over time, but there are always going to be opposing views of things in healthcare, and so you're always going to know there's a fight. So I'll just tell you to get ready for the fight. And as a country, as a world, we are very different than we were, honestly, even 30 years ago. We don't play nice with each other in the sandbox. And the politics of the country, particularly, has made it really, really challenging. We're the finding the middle. I'm not sure that there's a middle anymore, right? And everybody's either 100% on one side or 100% on the other side. And the fact that you don't agree is enough for me to hate you. And that's a terrible place for us to be, right? That's not how good policy gets made. That's 100% of a politics decision, and not a policy decision. Now, there are people, oh, I'm missing one. Is it there? Oh, there he is. Okay. So there are people every day who are making decisions about your future. Every day. They are making decisions about how you practice. They're going to make decisions about what patients you can see. They're making decisions about whether you get paid for the care you provide. People are making decisions every day. I give you the federal ones, but I also want you to remember there are people at the state level and the county level. I could put up all those same pictures, and those people are making really important decisions as well. So President Trump, Secretary Kennedy, Mehmet Oz, who will be the head of CMS, Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer from New York, who's the minority leader, Senator Thune on to his right, who is now the Senate Majority Leader from South Dakota, Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader from New York, and then Speaker Johnson from Louisiana. Those four people, when you're going to hear the term, the four corners are negotiating. Just so you know, the four corners are those four people who are the Senate and House leadership. So if you hear about, well, the four corners came out with a decision about the continuing resolution, that's what the four corners are. But every one of those people is going to make decisions. And the question is, based on what? Based upon what information, based upon whose advice, but they are going to make decisions. So our job, your job, is to make sure that in your career, you find a way for your voice to be heard by those people making the decisions. Or, I'll do you one better, someday be one of those people, right? There's no reason why any one of you can't be a member of Congress. You couldn't be governor in your state. Absolutely no reason other than you got to decide to do that, and then you got work to do. And I put this slide up because I hear a lot of chatter these days, right? And I want you all to just take a step back and realize that, and you see this in Florida, right? We are who we are as a country. Okay. We may not be who we want to be, but we are who we are. And the results of the election are the results of the election. And we cannot dismiss the 77 million people who elected President Trump. Nor can we dismiss the 75,000 who voted for Vice President Harris. But we can't just dismiss the fact that there are people who believe certain things about lots of stuff. And you may agree or not agree with them, but we can't dismiss the fact that the election showed that there is a big division in this country. But there's a lot of people who elected President Trump, and I will say, it's not like he was hiding who he was or was going to be. If anything, boy, he was pretty damn honest about here's what I'm going to do. Here's who I'm bringing with me. Oh, there's this Elon guy that's coming. If anything, I think he overplayed his hand, right? He told everybody, here's what I'm going to do. Here's the issues I'm going to take on. And here's the people who are going to be the people are going to carry it out. So I just be mindful. We have to take care of everybody, and particularly in emergency medicine, right? We don't get to judge, right? We can be curious. We can have differences of opinion, but we have to acknowledge that the country is made up of people who believe different things. Here's the other reason why healthcare will always and politics will always go together, because of money. And I referenced, I think, Pavan, before you got on, we were talking about that the House leadership released a bill today to fund the government and prevent the shutdown of the government on March 14th. And that bill does not have a fix to the Medicare payment schedule that we've been hoping for. But if you look at the percentage of GDP, that's kind of a good, we spend a lot of money in this country on healthcare, right? Now, the debate about whether we spend enough or too much or too little, we can have that another time. But the reality, again, back to reality, is we spend a lot of money on healthcare in this country, and that's not going to change. And here's why it's not going to change. Okay? Because one of the key drivers of healthcare spending are old people. And every day now, because of the post-war baby boom, right? So this is the baby boom echo from World War II, and now the second echo of that, 10,000 Americans, 10,000 every day become eligible for Medicare in this country. And I'm going to show you what that means. But before you judge, just know my birthday's in October and I will turn 65. So I'm one of those. So here comes the boom and the boomers. Here's what that means. Here's the two slides that basically lay out the problem. If you look at the slide on the left, and I will tell you that slide, if you look at the mark in the bottom right of that slide, is from the Kaiser Family Foundation. If you take away nothing from this talk, kff.org is your best friend to understand about health policy. The Kaiser Family Foundation is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank that does amazing work in explaining how the system of healthcare in this country works. They have a Medicare 101 primer. They have a Medicaid 101 primer. If you go through the KFF primers, you will know more about Medicare and Medicaid than 99.9% of the population, including probably most members of Congress. So part of the message of advocacy is always be the most educated person at that table talking about that issue. Don't let anybody ever outwork you in understanding the issues. So if you look where we are now in 2030, right? We're halfway here. We're 2025. So there's about 65 million people on Medicare. But look at what's happening over the next 5, 10, 20 years. Not only does the number of people go up, but look at the age distribution. Look at the number of people over the age of 80 and the number of people over the age of 90. Now, look, unless I missed it, the only thing that Hims, Hers doesn't sell are immortality pills, but I think they probably would if they could. But um, but we're gonna be an older this boom, this wave. Look, we're gonna be sick when somebody at some point something happens when you're 90, right? At some point the batteries wear out and something happens. Um, that curve by itself wouldn't be so terrible unless you look at the curve to the right, because Medicare is funded mostly through general payroll tax. So there's a Medicare tax on payroll. But if the number of people in the workforce goes down at the same time as the number of people who are going on Medicare goes up, those two curves are going in exactly the wrong direction. So I will tell you that the current system of funding Medicare is truly unsustainable. And you go, well, that was dumb. Why did they set it up that way? Well, let me give you a little history lesson. When was Medicare enacted? What year? And you don't really have to know. I won't pimp you if you don't know. It's okay. 1965. So you go, okay, 1965, that was like forever ago. But people go on Medicare at 65, right? Keep that in mind. Well, what was the average life expectancy for a man in 1965? And the answer was 63. And you're like, well, wait a minute. They were creating a program when statistically men would be dying already. But women at that age in 1965, their lifespan was 67. So what they were really creating was a program for women whose husbands would die, and then they would still have some Medicare healthcare coverage until they died 2 years after that. That's really all they thought they were creating. They had no idea that people were going to live to be 80, 90, 100. They never planned for the financing to meet that demand, and the financing structure has not changed since it was enacted. So we have a population that's completely changed in terms of the sociodemographics, and the funding mechanism hasn't. That's the problem with Medicare. That's why you're all going to have to work really hard, because I want my scooter. Now, I'm not advocating, nor do I want you to start advocating for death panels, right? That's not where we want to go. That's not, I think, a reasonable solution. Although I will point out, if you look at the picture on the right, that dude with the guitar is not exactly rocking the house now, is he? And I would offer to you that the lady in the lime green dress, if you offered her the death panel right now, I think she probably would take it in that picture. All right. Now, there are also, remember we talked about advocacy, and there are lots of people involved in this. There are some really bad actors in this whole healthcare thing. I don't know if you're all Nicolas Cage fans, but and I think the worst actors are healthcare insurers. And we're going to talk a little bit about them. They are taking money out of the system purely for profit. And they can talk about, we are managing healthcare and blah, blah, blah. Look, they are doing nothing but taking money from people like you and I who go to work, and our employers give the insurance company money to pay for healthcare. And all the insurance company is supposed to do is pay for the healthcare. And yet they have interspersed themselves in the middle of this and extracting huge amounts of money out of the system. So United Health Group, the largest insurer on the planet, made $16 billion in profit last year. $16 billion in profit. And they are a publicly traded company. So there are people who literally day trade UHG stock to make money. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not sure that's exactly what we all thought the system was supposed to be doing. But these are the realities. So, and those people with their $16 billion, here's the other thing. Vertical integration has driven healthcare to become much more of a business. And again, I'm sorry for that. I'm not like I made it happen, but it's happened. Back in the 1980s, the business people, the MBAs went, hey, we spend like 15% of our GDP on healthcare. Who's getting all that money? And how do we get in on that? And they got in on that. And the businesses, the MBAs figured that we ought to make healthcare much more of a business and much more transactional. And then, insurers like United said, well, we don't want to just have money. We don't want just the insurer part. Why don't we do the pharmacy part? And why don't we do specialty pharmacy? And by the way, why don't we just employ the physicians directly? Now, UHG can't employ the physicians directly, so they created a shell corporation called Optum Care. And Optum now employs 90,000 physicians in this country. They are the largest employer of physicians in this country. So you have an insurer, that's the pharmacy. Oh, by the way, they also are Change Healthcare. They process all of the more claims than any other entity. So they basically have a monopoly on healthcare. So those people want to make money. I wanted to point out just about insurance as an industry, right? This is a very, very busy slide, but I want you to focus down here. Look at the names of those four companies. Where have you seen the names of those four companies?
Commercials like car
On every damn sporting event on the planet.
insurance.
Those four companies have been in business for either over or just about 100 years. They must be doing something right. You look, those four companies who you see the ads all the time, and you can tell me which is your favorite, whether it's, Jake from State Farm or the Gecko, or the Chaos, whoever you like. And by the way, those commercials aren't free, right? So they are making buco money because they can afford to advertise on everything. And here's what's happened in healthcare. So in healthcare, if you look at all the little individual dots, those used to be individual insurance companies. And what's happened? Consolidation has happened. And so now you have massive insurance companies like United Health Group and Blue Cross, now called Elevance. You have Anthem, you have Kaiser, you have Centene, you have Humana. You have very few insurers. And what that does is it changed negotiating leverage. If you are a single group trying to staff a single ED in this country, here's how the negotiation united goes. They send you a document and they go, that's the contract. That's also the end of the negotiation. You either sign the contract or you can be out of network. That's basically it. They don't negotiate with single groups anymore. They send them a document. They say, here's what we're willing to pay you. If you like it, great. If you don't, too bad. And they also employ lobbyists. So if you think that those insurance companies who have been so successful just leave it to random chance, they do not. And they have an army of zombie lobbyists in DC and state capitals every day, trying to convince those decision makers that they should pass laws and write the regulations that help the insurance companies. That's how the game is played.
How is that legal?
How is that legal?
I don't-
It's easy because you're allowed to in this country. Lexi, it's a great question. And the whole thing of when lobbying actually started, there are multiple theories around which president allowed that to happen. But it is, again, we got to deal with reality, right? So if you wanted to say, boy, that should never be, that sounds terrible. How do we let these people who are doing nothing but trying to make money influence policy? I would agree with you. If we could start all over again, we shouldn't allow it, but it is. And so we either have to fight that or we're going to get crushed. And we've got lots of things to worry about, right? We've got a lot of issues to worry about. We have scope of practice, we have reimbursement, we have to worry about things like out of network and surprise billing. We got to go, what are we going to do with telehealth? We got malpractice, you have student loans, and then we have this whole AI thing, which is of all these problems, that's the one that terrifies me the most because it is, again, the Google people that boy, they are playing three-dimensional chess 5 years from now. And we're still trying to figure out what generative AI means, and they are not waiting for us. And then we've got real problems in the ED, right? So I don't want to make this all about the politics and the business because we've got crowding and boarding. We have violence in the ED. We still have a terrible substance use problem in this country. And the one that breaks my heart the most is that we have a terrible pediatric mental health problem in this country. Those four things are things that we've got to work on. The reality, we've got to change the reality of those. And I will just point out the boarding, the crowding, the picture on the top left, there's two things that are most amazing to me is number one, there is actually an empty stretcher. I'm not sure how that happened. But number two, I know why there's an empty stretcher. If you look where it is, there's no physical way to get to that stretcher. Right? Unless you crawled under the other two stretchers. So we have work to do. And some days, this is what it feels like for me. I do advocacy every day, and particularly now being president-elect of the college, I feel like I'm pushing the rock up the hill every day, except I feel like those zombies are jumping on top of it. So it feels pretty rough times sometimes. Now, right about now, you're like, Tony, I know you had no disclosures, but you probably should be sponsored by something to treat depression. Because right now you're all going, oh my God, what did I sign up for? This is nothing but terrible. We're at the bottom of the mountain. Now we're going to go up the mountain because now we're going to talk about why you should feel good about being here and why you should still feel great about the choice you've made. So why do you have to do this? Why do you have to be an advocate? Because not only are there decisions made in Washington, there are decisions made in your state capital, there are decisions made in your hospital, and there are decisions made in your personal life every day. And every day you get to be an advocate. You can advocate about different things, but you get to be an advocate every day at a different level. So, Simon Sinek did in one of his original TED Talks, did the why, what, that why, how, and what, right, for Apple. And I want you to focus on, of all the stuff I talked about, it is overwhelming, right? You go, the politics is overwhelming, the issues can be overwhelming. You're like, how can I actually make a difference? And I'm going to tell you, you got to find your why. There are too many issues to devote your entire life to. You can't do that. You will flame out very quickly. So you got to think about what is the one thing that I really want to change? And I'll pose it to you as fast forward 30 years from now. And if you could be remembered for what was the one thing you made better? What was the one thing that everybody goes, yeah, Pavan, dude, he He fixed whatever. He really fought to make this better. So think about what that one thing is that means the most to you, and then you got to go find where that issue is owned. And I say that because I will tell you in emergency medicine, it's getting a little challenging because we have lots of passionate people within the college, but they're passionate about a whole portfolio of things. And honestly, as an organization, we're bandwidth limited too. And so I hear people say, well, if you don't fix X, I'm quitting ASAP. And I'm like, okay, but you do know we're working on A, B, C, all the way up to X. You do remember that. And all that stuff that is important to you, but not the top of your list. But on your list, we got to keep working on that stuff too. And we really need you here. And some people get that, but some people go, well, if you're not going to fix X, I don't care if you fix A through W. And I'm like, oh, okay, but really? So keep in mind your issue, your why may live somewhere else, but your A through W may still live in ASAP, right? So I don't want people to be discouraged, but I would offer to you, if you really care about climate health, right? ASAP will have a small voice there. But if you really want to go fix the world, you got to go to Greenpeace, right? You got to go where that's their why. And when I would offer to you, if you went to a Greenpeace meeting and you told them, what, or how are we going to fix the Medicare physician fee schedule, I'm pretty sure they would kick you out of the room, right? So I don't know why people think ACEP can fix every issue when if you give them something like that, they go, well, of course they would. They would think I'm out of my mind. Well, you're not out of your mind, but just keep in mind that even ACEP, as big as we are and as as much as hard as we're trying, we are limited, right? And so we still need you to be here. And so everybody's got a why. I'll give you a minute. So literally years ago, Mitt Romney ran for president and he literally campaigned he was going to cut PBS funding. And like people were like, Mitt, are you out of your mind? Like of all the things like you want to cut PBS funding? Like, and the Muppets were like, yo, bring it, Mitt, let's go. So. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment because this is usually where people this is just a point of personal privilege. The people will talk about, well, I'm going to fall on my sword on this issue. And I go, no, 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 no. Just so you know, falling on your sword means you're taking blame for something that you didn't do right. It's dying on the hill. That's the metaphor that your people are usually trying to talk about. So if you pick one issue and you go, well, if you don't fix this issue ASAP, I'm gonna leave, you're choosing to die on the hill. But falling on your sword is really not a metaphor. So that's just a personal thing. And I want you to keep in mind that you have now and you will continue to grow in power and influence. You have no idea how much you influence people. And I talk about creating ripples. And in emergency medicine, it's really tough because we can create ripples, but we often don't see where they go. We don't see how far they stretch, and we don't see the end result of what that ripple that we started is. But people trust physicians. Now, they trust nurses more. So when we get to that whole scope of practice thing, gets a little sticky there because they really do trust nurses more. But you influence more people than you know, and particularly in emergency medicine, we wear the whitest of hat in the house of medicine. We pick the hardest specialty by far. So don't forget that, right? We definitely get some cred for that. And again, I'm going to be very honest with you. If you're looking for a day in the happy life of happy dermatology, great. That's not what we do. And if you haven't started watching, how many of you have not watched The Pit? Okay, good.
I haven't, but
Oh,
I keep seeing that on like TikTok and stuff.
oh
I need to
God.
watch it. I get all the spoilers.
Okay, just so you know, if you're considering going to I think every medical student should be required to watch The Pit as an MS1. Because you're either going to love it and go, yes, that's where my people are, or you're going to go, that's insanity. I never want to go to the ED ever. So you've got to watch The Pit. Noah Wiley is amazing. The cast is amazing. The two people who are the medical writers, one is Mel Hebert, who does EM Rap, and his partner, Joe Sachs, who actually was the medical consultant for ER, the original show back in the day. Joe is now the producer of The Pit. So, like, if Maria, you're going to be amazed. But I will just say in the first, Lexi, help me out, first 5 minutes of the show, right? The hospital administrator comes down to bitch about boarding, about Press Ganey scores. And Noah Wiley, as the attending, basically bitches back at her about, well, why don't you get some of these boarders out of my ED? And then a naked guy runs out of the department. And you're like, yep, perfect. Let's go, 7 o'clock. Perfect. That's exactly what's going to happen. But I will tell you what, the premise of the show is it's 13 hours and it's one shift. It's a day in their life of the ED. And it's filmed at the old Allegheny General Hospital in Pittsburgh, redid their ED, and they took over the old ED and then renovated it into a studio. So it looks new. It's actually the old ED that it probably looks better than their new ED. Actually looks pretty damn good, but it is the old ED. What we do is really hard. I don't know if you've all seen this before. I'll give you a minute to read that. That's a real picture of a doc after a failed PD code, who then you have to go back and pick up the chart for the ankle sprain that's been there for 3 hours and they want to complain about the weight. We tell people that we do, and they look at us and they go, no, you can't possibly do that. You can't possibly leave the grieving parents of a 2-month-old and then go just pick up a chart of somebody with an ankle sprain. And we go, yeah, we do that all the time. And they go, that's not human. We go, yeah, think about that the next time you come to the emergency department. But I want to offer to you, this is what I call the restorative moment, right? So with all of the chaos going on, with all of the politics, with all of the bullshit, the fact that Epic is not customized to you the way you wanted it, this moment when you go into a room and another human being trusts you with their life as a total stranger, if that's not enough for you, you're in the wrong specialty, because everything else is going to be really hard. That moment should remind you why you are there. You are a healer. And honestly, sometimes we heal the body, sometimes we heal the soul, sometimes we heal the mind. Doesn't matter. Whatever they need healing, you can heal them. That's why you're there. And honestly, don't forget the mind and the soul part, because sometimes the medicine fails. The medicine eventually fails us all. And there are going to be times when you're going to tell people, I wish I could help you, but I can't. You're going to die. How you tell them that and how you've been with them as another human being makes all the difference in the world. So what do I want you to do? So first of all, advocacy is not random. It's like putting in a central line. There is a process, a step-by-step way to do this the right way. It takes work, it takes time, and you have to know how to do things, and you have to commit to the process, right? It's like everything else. There's a process that we know works, but you got to commit. You have to understand that there are going to be other people in the game, like I talked about, and you got to be able to size up who are the people who are your friends and who are your enemies, who's going to stand by you when things get tough and who's going to bail. And there are going to be haters. There are haters in the world. And this bothers me a lot. And what I would offer to you is this analogy. I'll give you the analogy of my wife loves home renovation shows, so we'll watch those together. And every series in a home renovation show, every new time they pick a house, what's the first episode of every new series? Demo day. Demo day. First episode is always demo day. Why? Because I can tear anything down in a day. Tearing down is easy. Tearing down is really easy. Building back up, now that takes patience and commitment and dedication and cooperation. So building is hard. Tearing down is easy. So when you see people on social media throwing shade and tearing stuff down, to me, that's like people who are throwing rocks through the window from the outside. I have no use for those people. No use for them at all. Now, is the House of Emergency Medicine and is ACEP perfect? Hell no. But we have a good foundation. We have to keep the house up. We've got to expand the house. So if you want to come for demo day, we'd love to have you. But the condition is you got to stick around for the rebuild because we need all of your help to rebuild, right? That's how this specialty will continue to thrive. That's how you'll feel valued. That's how you'll feel like you're part of something. Do not be a stone thrower from the outside. I hate those people on social media. And just so you know, they're cowards. The people who throw the stones the most, when you actually say to them, hey, would you like to have a conversation? The answer is silence. They don't want to have a conversation. They just want to throw stones. So there are different organizations out there, and I would offer to you that each one of these has a role in your future. Some of you may end up being more academic. Some of you may end up being program directors. Some of you, I don't know if are you guys DOs or MDs?
Me and Maria are at a DO program.
Okay. And honestly, I completely don't understand this whole DO versus MD thing or why. Just so you know that the ACEP is taking this on as an issue because we now have heard about how DOs are being treated really differently than allopathic graduates or allopathic students, and it's bullshit. So I always thought you were all smarter than we were because I only learned the allopathic stuff, and then you all learned the osteopathic stuff on top of that. I'm like, you're all smarter than I am. So we are taking that fight on. But bottom line is, look, there are organizations that you can belong to where you can use your voice or you can be a leader. And just like, the Power Rangers were much cooler when you put them all together because separately they were all kind of dorky, just saying. Now, in advocacy, you got to be willing to give, right? If you draw hard lines in the sand, all that does is create a fight, right? And I love that one if I'd agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong. But you got to be willing to compromise and you got to be willing to be a little bit humble here, right? And I love this quote from Einstein when he was asked, what's it like to be the smartest man? He said, go ask Nikola Tesla. Again, you're like, come on, really? So if you look at those qualities on the side, don't forget the one about humility. People lose their humility. And when you're dealing with other people and you're caring for other people, I don't use that word loosely. Our job is to care for people, not just provide medicine. We're to care for people. You have to keep a little bit humble. And you got to find ways to cooperate. You got to find your friends. You got to find whenever you can create a win for everybody, that's the goal, right? Because if there are winners or losers, guess what happens next legislative cycle when somebody lost? Oh, they come back. Yeah, they don't just go, oh, well, I guess I lost. I'll never win. No, they come back the next year. So if you can find a win for everybody, that's the way to do that. So the three things to do, make sure you are educated. And again, there's lots of resources out there, but my first stop or my one-stop shop is Kaiser Family Foundation. So make sure you are the most educated person at the table in the room when there's a discussion. You have to participate. You can't sit back and just expect that things are going to happen because you want them to. And then you got to contribute. You got to give. And there's two currencies. I'll get to that in a second. You can go testify. You can be on social media. That's fine, but don't be a stone thrower. When you figure out your why, let people know what your why is. That's what the ribbons and wristbands are for, right? Because how do I know if you care about breast cancer just looking at you? But if you're wearing a pink ribbon, everybody on the planet knows that you care about breast cancer, right? So that's how you find your peeps. So let people know what you care about. And please make sure that you vote, right? That is your democratic power, is to make sure you vote and to go meet your member of Congress, go meet your state senator, go meet these people and build a relationship. And you can be a leader. So the four people on the left, those are four emergency physicians in Congress. Dr. Ruiz from California, Ronnie Jackson on the bottom left, Mark Green bottom right, Oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He's from Georgia, Rich McCormick. So one Democrat, three Republicans. Arvin Venkat used to work for us at USACS. Actually, Dr. Ruiz used to work for us back when it was EMP in California. But Arvin is now, he got elected to the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, not in 26, in 24. He was the first physician in the Pennsylvania House in 60 years. You're like, well, who the hell was telling them about healthcare? And the answer is nobody. So the first and only physician in the Pennsylvania House and Senate, not the whole legislature, in 60 years. You're like, what? Deb Ori is the medical director for the CDC. Ann Zink was the former state health director for Alaska. And Steve Stack on the bottom is past president of the AMA and is currently the health director for the state of Kentucky. So these are emergency physicians who grew up just like you and I did, who have found their way into leadership roles. And advocacy is about building relationships, right? And I'm going to give you an example. Like, think about you find your why, and there's something that you want to go talk to your member of Congress about. If the first thing that you ever say to somebody when you meet them is, I want, how do you think that relationship goes? Not well. So I'm going to offer to you your homework as medical students. Pavan, now you have two things to do, right? Because you and Maria, you got to go watch the pit. Is go call up your state representative and say, I am a medical student at wherever you are, and I'm interested in healthcare and health policy. Is there anything I can do to work with you in your office as a constituent to help learn more about how healthcare works at the state? Is there anything I can do to help? Right? Is there anything that we medical students could do to help you? Right? So if you start the relationship with, I'd love to get to know you better, and I'd love to help, boy, that's a much different relationship. And you got to build that relationship because you never know when that other issue is going to come up that you really care about. But if the first time you go talk to somebody and you say, I want you to vote this way, and they don't know who you are, they're not going to listen to you. Right? So you got to go start building relationships now, even if there's nothing that you need right now. That's the best time to go start a relationship. And there are two currencies in advocacy, time and money. The money part, everybody, Lexi, we all hate it. You're like, how does that work? Oh my God, how can that possibly? It doesn't matter. It is. And so you can give time or money. And both of those are incredibly valuable, right? And if you can give both, if you're able to do that, that's great. If you can only give time right now, you give time. And if you can only give a little money, you give a little money. But if you don't give either of those, you are not in the game. So I want to really, really emphasize that you matter and your voice matters. Even this early on in your careers, it does matter. But keep in mind that you are part of a bigger voice, right? That the goal is not to divide the house. The goal is to find common ground in the house. And honestly, this is your fight. Like, I am on the downside of the mountain in the rubble on the side of the road. Like this, Mike, I'm done, right? This is about your future and about how you're going to have a career in healthcare. And again, ripples. We create ripples. And I want to tell you a story that really sums it up for me. This is Raven. So Raven, I met in January when I was working a clinical shift out in Denver, Colorado. Now, I don't know about you yet, but over my years in the emergency department, whenever I take care of a kid, I always offer to let them, I ask them, have you ever listened to your heart before? And most of them, well, I should be honest, I don't ask the screamers that. The kids who are screaming, they get none of this. But the kids who aren't screaming, I ask them that. And I did that really for two reasons. One is if you've ever done that, and you've watched that kid's eyes wide open light up the first time they actually hear their heart, it's pretty cool. The second thing is I've always hoped, really believed that one day, one of those kids, I was going to create a ripple, and one of those kids was going to grow up to be an emergency physician because of that moment. And I let hundreds, thousands of kids listen. So I go to Raven. Have you ever listened to your heart before? No. Would you like to listen to your heart? And I hand her my stethoscope, and she puts the stethoscope in her ears and takes the bell of the stethoscope and doesn't listen to her heart. She leans over and listens to my heart and then says, turn around, and makes me do the breathe. And I'm like, she's the one. She's Neo. I found her. She's the one. I don't care what the oracle said. She's the one. And at that moment, I don't care what happened the rest of the, they could have not paid me for that day. They could have not paid me for the month. I don't care if I was having to handwrite it. That moment, that moment is what you should practice for, because I'm absolutely positive. I am now Morpheus again. I am absolutely positively sure she is going to be an emergency physician when she grows up because of that moment. And all of this, you got to start today, right? No excuses, no excuses. Today, you start your advocacy journey. And with that, I will say thank you. And you'll have the slides, but if you scan the QR code, that's my V card. That's my contact information. And I would offer to you, please, 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 if at any point you just want to talk about the career, you want to talk about ACEP, you have a question, please, please feel free to reach out. It is the best part of being involved in ACEP is mentoring. It is now my why. Okay, for all the battles that I fought and stuff I fought for, the why for me, my why is about mentoring and getting people excited about the specialty, excited about being an advocate in the specialty. So that's what I got for you.
Wow, thank you. That was inspiring. I'm like, wow, I really didn't.
That's the game here, right? And Lexi, I'm glad you said, because look, the first half you're like, okay, that was not inspiring. That was depressing. You're like, oh my God, this sucks. I never want to do this. I'm gonna go, be a lawyer. But I got to take you back, right? You got to break down and then build you back up. And every one of you, I'm just telling you, just so you know, I had the most mediocre MCATs. I went to a city university school in New York that was known for business, where I rocked like a 3.4 GPA. I didn't get into medical school the first time I applied. I taught high school for 2 years. Thank God for marginal pass at the University of Vermont. Otherwise, I never would have been a doctor. I still don't know what's pink or purple on a slide. It doesn't matter, right? And thank God, there's no life or death moments with the Krebs cycle and the ED. Just saying. I know people might tell you that they're lying, just so you know. But the goal here is to let you know that it's the most amazing specialty. It's the hardest one. But if you want to really feel like you make a difference in the world, you will.
That's so true. I'm like, I also did the stuff about the insurance, like it was very educational. I feel like sometimes it's hard as medical students to like learn all this stuff. I guess like where do you find it, or are you staying up to date on all the politics? So it's nice, A, that there's someone like you who's so educated to tell us about it, but like I said, it also like inspired me to like want to look into it more on my own. So
Yep. Are you all members of EMRA?
I am, yeah. So
Okay, so you should all be EMRA members. And as EMRA members, you have access to something called Practice Essentials. So two guys, Nick Stark and Nick Cozy, said, you know what? Even many residencies don't teach anything about the real world. And so Practice Essentials is this, I think it's 8 modules. I think they're working on up to 16 modules that basically walk you through some of the very basics of what is Medicare, right? What is documentation? What do you mean documentation? What does that even mean, right? So make sure you join EMRA. And when you join EMRA and ACEP at the same time. We have a joint membership agreement. And you'll get access to everything that is EMRA and everything that is ACEP at the same time. And ACEP has a national medical student council, just like you have the one in Florida. So get your acts together and run for national, speaker of the medical student council. And But also the Kaiser Family Foundation is great. Once you're an EMRA ACEP member, go poke around on the ACEP website. There's a ton of stuff there. So there's a lot. I know you have a lot of other stuff that you have to learn, but I would offer to you, those of you who take the time to learn not just the medicine part, but the practice part and the professional part, you will be light years ahead of your colleagues. Very selfishly, when you want to go into a residency, if you can convey that you are really enamored about healthcare policy and you really understand about the importance of documentation and how we, like you're going to blow PDs out of the water, because they're, everybody talks about they want to heal the planet, and I talk to all the PDs and they read all the slows and the letters and they're like, oh my God. But if you really start this journey of trying to learn the rest of what you need, what's going to be part of your life, people will acknowledge that. They'll go, this person understands there's a real world they're entering into. So when do you all start doing, when do you do your away rotations?
I guess technically they start at different times for different people, but like I'll be taking Comlex step in June and then doing
Then you
away.
get to go do you do your aways then.
Yeah, so starting in June.
And do you already have to start thinking about like what residency you want to go to? Because you do, right? Because then you got to decide where you're going to go do your
Yeah, this
auditions,
is the
right?
year. This is the year we apply.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
All
great.
right.
It's going very fast. So it's like I was like, oh, I have time, and then it's time,
It's
Like
time.
that
It's
the
time.
little thing that you had, the little
Yeah.
cartoon. It's like, oh,
The
it's
time is now.
today. It's
Yeah.
today.
What time? Yeah. Today. Oh, you're like, oh crap. Yeah.
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 But I don't know.
Pavan's like, no, I'm just an MS1. I got time.
I don't even know when my away rotations start because I like to know what's happening 2 months into the
Yeah, you
future
don't
in the
need to.
calendar.
That's so
Yeah,
far ahead. You don't
Okay.
need
Well,
that.
fair enough.
but
Fair
good
enough.
luck to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank
It's kind of
you.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was saying that I think it's this talk specifically, even like little things. I mean, not even in emergency medicine, for example, like on my IM rotation, we did like MDR rounds as well. And so we would sit with the nursing staff, case managers, and we would sit and talk about like, the boarding time within the hospital and when patients get moved from observation to inpatient status and all these little things that
Yep.
like as a med student, you're sitting there and you're like, I know the Krebs cycle.
Yeah.
I
knew
was
you were going to say
studying
that.
that.
Would
Yeah,
you like
like
to talk about CoA? Because I can
yeah.
talk all about that, and ATPase. They're like, no, we don't want to talk about that. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it is good for students. Like this talk is definitely going to be beneficial for a lot of students,
Yeah.
whether they go into emergency medicine or not. I think it's a good thing to know because you need to know about the stuff no matter what specialty you go into.
Yep. Are
Absolutely.
you all, any of you going to the symposium by the sea, the FCEP one in Miami? We in Miami again this year? Where are we going this year,
I
Abigail?
think Fort Lauderdale is
Fort
where,
Lauderdale. Yeah. Yeah. I'll be talking there too.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Heard rumors about a volleyball competition. Dr. Cirillo, are you participating?
I did not hear about that. I will have to talk to Dr. Gu about that and see which maybe I'm there just to referee. That might be it. They're probably worried about like my hips or something like that.
it's still participating, right?
Yes, yes. That's very nice of you to say. The joke I say is I'm like Shakira, my hips don't lie. They just mock me in the mornings, that's all.
Oh my goodness.
I actually had a question. So
Yeah.
I guess as you're saying, as students to start getting involved in stuff, are there like, I mean, obviously there's a lot going on in healthcare and in the world right now, but is there anything like specific, like any current threat specifically to EM that you think that students should be aware of or ways that we can get advocate in those situations?
Yeah, there's a lot right now, Maria. I mean, this administration, again, short of what you like or don't like, it is unprecedented unpredictability, right? And just look at the tariffs, right? This president and he's very different than when he was president, when he was 45. This is a different guy. And he is taking his business approach of hardline negotiations, and he's applying that on the world stage in stuff that it's never been applied to before. You know, people would threaten tariffs, but they didn't put them on one day, take them off 15 minutes later, put them back on. Like that's chaos. And so it's a little hard to know where all of the threats are because it just seems like there's nothing off limits. I will say the thing that worries me the most is, you know, we have this law called EMTALA. I don't know if you all know that, right? The Emergency Medicine Treatment and Active Labor Act, which basically says, look, when somebody shows up in the ED, yeah, you got to decide whether they have what's called an emergency medical condition or not. And you do that through what's called a medical screening examination or an MSE. And it used to be that, look, the physician would just do what they needed to do to figure that out. And sometimes that meant just you could talk to the patient and figure out they didn't have an emergency medical condition. Sometimes you end up doing CAT scans and LPs and lots of stuff to go, I'm not sure this is not meningitis until we really look. And people trusted that what you did, if you met the medical standard, was you met your EMTALA obligation. And people would stay out of that in between you and the patient. And now we see politicians, legislators, regulators, the courts, all and insurers all trying to stick their nose between you and the patient. That's the greatest thing that I worry about because unless we really get them out of there, they will continue to push us further and further away from the patient. So nothing specific right now. And I would just say to you, I think the best start for all of you is to again, go to EMRA. EMRA has committees that have some specific focuses. You can reach out to I met the Medical Student Council president. Her name is Zoe. I'm trying to remember her last name, but I was at the EMRA retreat with her. Just keep in mind, we're all the same flavor of knucklehead here, right? And I know some of us are further on our journey of knuckleheadness, but you don't be shy. There's no points for being shy here. So feel free to reach out to people. It actually makes the leaders feel good when people do that. So when you reach out and you go, hey, I just really want to get involved. I know you're a leader. Can you help me? Right? Everybody wants to be a mentor. We're a little timid sometimes about that. So don't be shy and just keep asking, how can I get more involved? You will be welcomed and there's lots to do.